Picture a river so wide you cannot see the other bank. Not a lake, a river, moving, muscular, restless, carrying so much brown silt, it looks like liquid earth. In the monsoon, it swells to 20 kilometers across in places. It has been known to shift its course overnight, swallowing villages, creating new islands, redrawing the map. It is one of the few rivers in the world classified as male in Hindu tradition, and it defines physically, culturally, spiritually everything about the land it flows through. On one bank, a tea garden, rows upon rows of low, dense bushes stretching to the horizon, bright green against the grey monsoon sky. Women in bright clothes moving between them with baskets. The air smells of something clean and slightly bitter and entirely distinctive. The world's most consumed beverage, the cup of tea that a billion people reach for every morning, begins here, in this soil, in this rain. And somewhere in that same landscape, in the grasslands that line that great river, a rhino moves. Single-horned, prehistoric looking, massive, quiet. One of the last of its kind. In numbers so small, 50 years ago, that extinction was a real and imminent possibility. And saved. Pulled back from the edge by one of the great conservation stories of modern India. This is Assam, the land of the great river, the land of the one-horned rhino, the land of the world's finest tea, and one of the most culturally rich, ecologically extraordinary, and consistently underestimated states in the entire country. Let's spend an hour here. I promise it's worth it. Namaskar and welcome back to Around India in Half an Hour. I am Ray and this is episode 3. We've been to Andhra Pradesh, coastal, spicy, ancient, and the birthplace of the man who designed India's national flag. We've been to Arunachal Pradesh, the dawn-lit mountains, the tribes, the monasteries, the frontier. And now we come west and south along the northeast to the state that is the gateway to all of it. Assam. Of all the states in the Indian northeast, Assam is the one most people have heard of. Tea, Kaziranga, the Brahmaputra, these names are known far beyond India's borders. And yet, most people who know those names have never been there and have only the vaguest sense of what Assam actually is. Its history, its people, its complexity, its food, its extraordinary cultural life. Today we fix that, or at least we try. And by the end of this episode, Assam will feel real to you, not a label on a tea packet. A living, complicated, magnificent place. Assam covers 78,438 square kilometers, roughly the size of the Republic of Ireland, or a little smaller than Sri Lanka. It sits in the northeastern corner of India, connected to the rest of the country by the narrow Siliguri corridor, sometimes called the Chicken's Neck, a strip of land barely 22 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, flanked by Nepal, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. This narrow connection to the Indian mainland is not just a geographical curiosity. It is a strategic reality that has shaped Assam's relationship with the rest of India for centuries. The state divides into two distinct geographical zones, defined by two entirely different river systems. The first and dominant zone is the Brahmaputra Valley, an enormous alluvial plain stretching roughly 650 kilometers from east to west across the breadth of the state, covering about 69% of Assam's total area. This valley is the Brahmaputra's creation. The river, originating in the glaciers of Tibet as the Tsangpo, crashing through the Himalayas as the Dihang, and entering Assam as the Brahmaputra, flows west across this plain in a channel of extraordinary breadth and power. In places, it is 5 kilometers wide. In flood season, it can reach 20. It is braided, meaning it splits into multiple channels around sandbars and islands, constantly rearranging itself. The world famous river island, Majuli, the largest inhabited river island on earth, home to over 150,000 people, and the monastic tradition of Satriya culture, floats in the middle of this vast braided system. Majuli has been shrinking for decades as the river erodes its banks. At its largest, it was over 1200 square kilometers. Today it is barely 350. The river giveth and the river taketh away. The Brahmaputra is the only major river in India classified as male, locally known as Luit in Assamese, and referred to in ancient texts with a masculine identity. It is one of the world's largest rivers by discharge volume, fifth in the world by average flow rate. An antecedent river, meaning it existed before the Himalayas rose and simply kept carving its path as the mountains grew around it. It has been flowing through this landscape for longer than the mountains that flank it have existed. There is something almost incomprehensible about that fact. The Brahmaputra Valley is flanked by hills on all sides. The foothills of Arunachal Pradesh and Bhutan to the north, and the highlands of Meghalaya, Nagaland, and Manipur to the south. Between these high hillsides and the river, the valley floor is flat, fertile, and intensely cultivated. Paddy fields, tea gardens, floodplain, grasslands, and riverine forest alternate across the landscape. The annual floods, devastating and life-giving in equal measure, deposit a fresh layer of mineral-rich silt across the farmland every monsoon, maintaining the extraordinary fertility that has supported dense human settlement for millennia. The second zone is the Barak Valley in the south, a separate drainage basin centered on the Barak River, which eventually flows into Bangladesh. The Barak Valley is culturally distinct from the Brahmaputra Valley, more closely connected to the Bengali speaking world, and has its own complex political and identity history within Assam. The hills that frame Assam, the Karbi Anglong Plateau in the center, the Dima Hasao hills in the south, contain their own tribal cultures, their own forests, and their own distinct identities within the larger Assamese state. The climate of Assam is monsoonal and intensely wet. Annual rainfall in some parts reaches over 3,000 millimeters. This state is one of the wettest places in India, and that rainfall combined with the rich alluvial soil deposited by the Brahmaputra creates conditions of extraordinary biological productivity. The forests here are among the most biodiverse in South Asia. The tea gardens that cover vast swaths of the valley floor require this particular combination of soil, water, and temperature to produce what many regard as the finest black tea in the world. Assam occupies a uniquely central position in the northeast. It is the hub through which all other northeastern states connect to the rest of India. It shares borders with seven other states and two countries. Within India, Assam borders Arunachal Pradesh to the north and northeast, Nagaland and Manipur to the east, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram to the south and southwest, and West Bengal to the west. This central position makes Assam not just a state but a connective tissue. The road and rail links to every other northeastern state pass through it. Internationally, Assam shares a border with Bhutan to the northwest, a broadly peaceful and largely uncontested boundary, and with Bangladesh to the south, where the Barak River eventually flows. The Bangladesh border has historically been associated with significant immigration into Assam, a fact that is central to understanding the state's most politically charged debates. Concerns about demographic change driven by immigration from Bangladesh, going back to the colonial and post-independence era, accelerating after the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, have shaped Assam's politics deeply. The Assam Accord of 1985, the National Register of Citizens process, these are all expressions of the same fundamental anxiety about identity, belonging, and the right to call this land home. It is a complex, painful debate without easy answers. Assam's ancient name is Pragjotishpura, the city of eastern light. It appears in the Mahabharata. The legendary king Narkasura ruled here. His defeat by Lord Krishna is celebrated across Assam and much of eastern India during Diwali as Naraka Chaturdashi. The great goddess temple of Kamakhya on the Nilachal hill above Guwahati is believed to stand on the very site where Narkasura's kingdom flourished. This is one of the most powerful and ancient Shakta pilgrimage sites in India, a place whose goddess is not represented by an idol but by a natural rock fissure that symbolizes the womb, the source of creation. The temple's Ambubachi Mela, held each June when the goddess is said to menstruate, draws hundreds of thousands of pilgrims from across the subcontinent. Assam was home to a series of ancient kingdoms, the Varman, Salastamba, and Pala dynasties, before the arrival of the force that would define Assam's medieval history more than any other, the Ahom kingdom. In 1228 CE, a Thai prince named Chaulung Sukapa crossed the Patkai hills from what is now Myanmar with a small army and established a kingdom in the upper Brahmaputra valley. What followed was one of the most remarkable dynasties in South Asian history. The Ahom kingdom endured for nearly 600 years, from 1228 to 1826. It successfully repelled 17 Mughal invasions over the course of those 6 centuries, making it one of the very few powers of South Asia that the Mughal Empire could never subdue. The most celebrated of these Ahom military triumphs was the Battle of Saraighat in 1671, a naval battle on the Brahmaputra near present-day Guwahati, in which the Ahom military commander Lachit Borphukan decisively defeated a massive Mughal fleet commanded by the Rajput general Ram Singh. The story of Lachit Borphukan is one of the great military epics of Indian history. A man so devoted to duty that when he discovered his own maternal uncle had been negligent in building a defensive earthwork, he had him executed, saying the words that have become legendary: "My uncle is not dearer to me than my country." He is Assam's greatest military hero. A gold medal named in his honor is given to the best graduating officer at the National Defence Academy. His statue stands on the banks of the Brahmaputra at Guwahati. The Ahoms also made Assam a center of culture and literature. The Burangi's chronicles, written first in the Thai Ahom language and later in Assamese, are unique in Indian historiography, systemic, year by year, historical records maintained across centuries, providing an unbroken narrative of Assamese history that is extraordinary in its detail. Most of what we know about medieval Assam comes from these chronicles. The other giant of Assamese cultural history in this period is Srimanta Sankaradeva, born in 1449, a Bhakti saint, philosopher, poet, playwright, musician, and social reformer who transformed Assamese society. Sankaradeva founded the Ekasarana Nam Dharma, a monotheistic faith centered on devotion to Lord Krishna, emphasizing equality, rejecting caste discrimination, and advocating social harmony. He established the Satras, monastic institutions that became centers of art, music, dance, and education, and the Namghars, community prayer halls, one of which exist in almost every Assamese village to this day. Sankaradeva is also the father of Satriya dance, one of India's 8 classical dance forms born in the monasteries he founded. He created the Ankiya Nath, a form of devotional theatre, and composed Borgeets, devotional songs of such lyrical beauty that they are still sung at dawn in Satra monasteries across Assam. His contributions to Assamese literature, language, music, and social equality make him one of the greatest figures in the entire history of Indian civilization. He is, without question, the soul of Assam. The Ahom kingdom finally fell, not to the Mughals, but to the Burmese, who invaded Assam in 1817 and again in 1819 to 1822, causing destruction on a scale that became known as the Mangarata, the era of devastation. The wars and famines that accompanied the Burmese invasions killed a large proportion of Assam's population. It was in this weakened state that the Ahom king appealed to the British for help. The British came, defeated the Burmese in the First Anglo-Burmese War, and by the Treaty of Yandabo in 1826, Assam passed into British control. British rule transformed Assam in ways both profound and painful. The discovery that Assam's climate and soil were ideal for growing tea, first identified in 1823 by the Scottish adventurer Robert Bruce, who found tea plants growing wild in the forest, led to one of the great colonial economic enterprises. Tea plantations were established across the Brahmaputra Valley from the 1840s onwards. Labor was imported, often under exploitative conditions, close to indenture, from the tribal regions of central India. Santals, Mundas, Orams, and many others who were brought to Assam and whose descendants, the tea tribes, Chai Bagan Manu, form a distinct and significant community in Assam today. Their story of displacement, exploitation, resilience, and the gradual building of a new identity in a new land is one of the most important and often overlooked chapters of Assam's social history. Post-independence, Assam faced multiple challenges. The partition of Bengal in 1947 brought demographic changes. The creation of new northeastern states, Nagaland in 1963, Meghalaya, Manipur, and Tripura in 1972, Arunachal Pradesh in 1987, Mizoram in 1987, progressively reduced Assam's territory from what had been a vast administrative region. Ethnic insurgencies, the ULFA, United Liberation Front of Assam, the Bodo movement, brought periods of serious violence and instability. And the ongoing question of immigration from Bangladesh and who belongs and who does not has been the most persistent and divisive political issue in the state's modern history. Through all of it, through insurgency and flood and political turmoil, Assam has maintained its extraordinary cultural vitality. Bihu has been danced, tea has been picked, the Brahmaputra has flowed. Assam today has a population of approximately 36 million people, the fifth most populous state in India. The capital is Dispur, a neighborhood of Greater Guwahati, the largest city in the northeast, a rapidly growing metropolitan of over a million people situated on the banks of Brahmaputra. Other significant towns include Jorhat, the tea capital, historic heart of the Ahom kingdom, Dibrugarh in the east, Silchar in the Barak valley, and Tezpur on the Brahmaputra, often called the cultural capital of Assam. The economy rests on three pillars: tea, petroleum, and agriculture. Assam produces approximately 52% of India's total tea output and about 14% of global tea production, making it the world's largest tea growing region. The Assam tea industry employs over a million people directly. The second pillar, petroleum, is historically significant. Digboy in Upper Assam is the site of the oldest oil well in Asia, drilled in 1889, still producing oil to this day. The Numaligarh and Digboy refineries are significant national infrastructure. Agriculture, rice, jute, mustards, vegetables support this rural majority. Assam is also the gateway state for trade and transport with Southeast Asia and with northeastern India as a whole. The government's Act East policy has made Assam central to India's strategic ambitions in the region. Srimanta Sankardeva, already met in our history section but worth dwelling on. Born in 1449 in Bardhova in the Nagaon district, he lived to the age of 119, an almost implausible span, and spent every decade of it creating. Playwright, poet, composer, theologian, social reformer, dancer. He wrote major works in Assamese, Sanskrit, and Brajavali, a literary language he essentially invented. He created an entire artistic ecosystem: dance, theatre, music, visual art, in service of his spiritual and social vision. The Satriya dance he originated, the Borgeets he composed, the Namgars he founded, all of these survive and thrive in Assam today, 500 years after his birth. He is not a historical figure. He is a living presence. Lachit Borphukan, the great 17th century military commander who defeated the Mughal forces at the Battle of Saraighat in 1671. He is the archetypal Assamese hero, brave, principled, utterly devoted to the protection of his homeland. The story of how he continued commanding his troops from a sick bed during the Battle of Saraighat, reportedly saying that he would rather die fighting than live in defeat, has become part of the mythology of Assamese identity. He died shortly after the battle, aged around 50. His legacy has only grown in the centuries since. Bhupen Hazarika, born 1926 in Sadia, the easternmost tip of Assam. He was a singer, composer, lyricist, filmmaker, and poet who became one of the most beloved cultural figures in the history of Indian music. He sang in Assamese, Hindi, Bengali, and other languages, weaving together folk traditions, film music, and his own deeply felt humanism into songs that cut across every linguistic and regional boundary. His most famous composition, Manu Hai Manohar Babe, Man, You Must Cry for Man, is a searing call for human compassion set to a melody of heart-stopping simplicity. His Hindi version, Dil Hoom Hoom Kare, became nationally famous. He won the Dada Saheb Phalke Award, India's highest film honor, the Bharat Ratna, posthumously in 2019, and his music remains inseparable from the emotional life of Assam and of northeastern India as a whole. He was the voice of the river, of the Brahmaputra, of the northeast, of a kind of longing and love for the land that goes beyond words. Hima Das, born 2000 in Dhing, in the Nagaon district, daughter of a rice farmer. In July 2018, at the age of 18, she became the first Indian athlete to win a gold medal in a track event at a World Athletics Championship, taking the 400 meters gold at the IAAF World Under-20 Championships in Tampere, Finland. Within the following month, she won four more international gold medals. She was nicknamed the Dhing Express. She represents something that goes beyond athletics. A girl from a small village in Assam, from a farming family who ran her way into the consciousness of an entire nation. Her story is about talent, yes, but also about what becomes possible when someone backs themselves entirely. Gopinath Bordoloi, the first Chief Minister of Assam after independence, remembered as the man who ensured Assam remained part of India. During the partition negotiations in 1947, there were serious proposals that Assam or parts of it might be incorporated into Pakistan. Bordoloi fought those proposals with extraordinary skill and determination. He is credited alongside Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel with keeping Assam within India. He received the Bharat Ratna posthumously in 1999. Birubala Rabha, born 1956 in the Golpara district, a woman who dedicated her life to fighting witch hunting, the practice of accusing women, usually widows or women living alone, of being witches and then attacking or killing them. Witch hunting has historically been prevalent in parts of Assam and other northeastern states, and Rabha became its most determined and visible opponent, personally intervening in cases, sheltering survivors, and campaigning for legal protection. She has been called the Witch Hunt Slayer and received the Padma Shri in 2021. Her courage in defending the most vulnerable women in Assamese society is a story that deserves far more international recognition than it receives. Assamese cuisine is one of the great underappreciated culinary traditions of India. It is built on a philosophy of restraint, minimal spice, maximum freshness, flavors that come from the ingredient itself rather than from what you add to it. It is the cuisine of river plains and rain-fed forests, of fish and rice and mustard oil and the sour, tangy flavors that the Assamese palate loves. above almost anything else. The foundation of every Assamese meal is rice, specifically many varieties of it. Assam is one of India's most important rice growing regions, and the varieties here include aromatic types used for special occasions and everyday varieties consumed at every meal. Rice is eaten boiled, steamed, puffed, flattened, fermented, and wrapped in leaves. In Assam, rice is not a side dish. Rice is the meal, and everything else is its accompaniment. A traditional Assamese meal begins with khar, a class of alkaline preparations made using the ash of the dried skin of a particular variety of banana, filtered through water to create a lye solution. This is mixed with raw papaya or fish or both and cooked into a dish that is simultaneously unusual, cleansing, and deeply flavorful. Khar is unique to Assamese cuisine. There is nothing quite like it anywhere else in India. It is the first course believed to aid digestion. Masor Tenga, the quintessential Assamese fish curry. Light, sour, clear, a thin broth made tangy with tomatoes, lemon, or the utenga, the elephant apple, a large sour fruit native to the region. River fish, rohu, katla, or smaller varieties caught fresh from the Brahmaputra tributaries are cooked in this broth with minimal spice. It is the opposite of the rich, heavy fish curries of coastal India. Masur Tenga is light, restorative, and completely addictive. It is the dish every Assamese person eats when they want to feel at home. Pork is central to the food culture of many communities in Assam, particularly the hill tribes and the non-Hindu communities. Pork cooked with bamboo shoot, kahori aru ganj tenga, is one of the great pork preparations of northeastern India. The bamboo shoot ferments the cooking liquid into a gentle sourness that cuts through the richness of the pork in a way that is deeply satisfying. Smoked pork, roasted on bamboo skewers over an open fire, is another treasured preparation. The smoke concentrating and deepening the flavor into something almost intense. Duck curry, particularly duck cooked with the ash gourd, a variety of white gourd that grows abundantly in Assam, is winter food, celebration food, the dish served at Bihu. The duck meat is darker and richer than chicken and paired with the mild gourd and a restrained spicing of turmeric and mustard. It is one of the most satisfying things you can eat in Assam on a cold December evening. Pitas, rice cakes made in dozens of variations, consumed particularly during Bihu. Til pita, thin rolled rice crepes, filled with sesame seeds and jaggery, cooked over a low flame until the filling caramelizes. Narikol pita, coconut filled pita, rice cakes, sometimes steamed, sometimes fried. Sunga pita, baked inside a bamboo tube over a fire, the bamboo imparting its own subtle flavor to the rice. Pitas are not everyday food, they are festival food, the food of Bihu, the food that every Assamese mother and grandmother makes better than anyone else, the food of nostalgia and belonging. Jolpan, the traditional Assamese breakfast or light meal. Beaten rice, chira, a curd and jaggery served in bell metal vessels called banbati. It is the most uncomplicated thing in the world, and yet it is deeply, particularly Assamese. The combination of textures, soft, slightly chewy rice, creamy curd, grainy jaggery, the metallic gleam of the vessel, cool morning air. It is a breakfast that connects you to something old and calm. Assam tea, and we cannot speak of Assamese food without speaking of tea. Assam produces a tea unlike any other in the world. The Assamese climate, heavy monsoon rains, high humidity, warm temperatures, the particular mineral content of the Brahmaputra's silt creates growing conditions for the Camellia sinensis plant that produces leaves of exceptional boldness, malt, and color. Assam tea brewed properly is a deep mahogany colored cup with a brisk, slightly astringent finish and a malty richness that holds up to milk in a way that Darjeeling's more delicate leaves never can. When the British popularized tea drinking in the Victorian era, it was primarily Assam tea they were drinking. The robust milk-friendly character of a morning cup of builder's tea, an English breakfast blend, that character is Assamese. Every time someone in London or Dublin or Melbourne puts the kettle on, there is an Assamese tea garden somewhere in that cup. Kaziranga National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1985, Kaziranga is the primary home of the Indian one-horned rhinoceros. The park sits on the southern bank of the Brahmaputra, its vast grasslands and riverine forests creating perfect habitat for rhinos, elephants, wild water buffalo, swamp deer, and tigers. The one-horned rhino, the magnificent, armor-plated, prehistoric-looking creature, was reduced to barely 200 individuals in the early 20th century by hunting and habitat loss. Through determined conservation, the population has recovered to over 2,600. More than two-thirds of the world's total one-horned rhino population lives in Kaziranga. That is one of the great conversion success stories in the history of wildlife management anywhere in the world. Jeep safaris in Kaziranga, particularly in the early morning mist, are among the finest wildlife experiences in India. Rhinos grazing in the grassland, elephants moving through the reeds, the Brahmaputra visible in the distance through the trees. Majuli Island, the world's largest inhabited river island, accessible by ferry town from Jorhat. Majuli is the heartland of Satriya culture, home to over 20 active satras, the Vaishnava monasteries founded in the tradition of Sankardeva. The monks of Majuli have maintained unbroken traditions of Satriya dance, mask making, music, and religious practice for centuries. The island is also a center of mask making. The Satriya theatrical tradition uses elaborate painted masks of mythological characters made from clay and bamboo by craftsmen whose families have made them for generations. Beyond its cultural significance, Majuli is simply beautiful, a flat green island threaded by waterways with a quiet, timeless quality that is unlike anywhere else in Assam. It is shrinking. Go before more of it is gone. Kamakhya temple on Nilachal Hill above Guwahati. This is one of the most important Shakta temples in India. The goddess Kamakhya, an aspect of Shakti, the divine feminine, is worshipped here not as an idol but as a natural yoni shaped rock fissure that symbolizes the creative power of the universe. The temple dates back to at least the 8th century, though its current structure is largely from the 16th century. The Ambubachi Mela in June, when the goddess is sent to menstruate, and the temple is closed for 3 days before reopening in celebration of the divine feminine's life-giving power, draws over 500,000 pilgrims. It is one of the most charged and spiritually intense gatherings in India. Sibasagar, in Upper Assam, this was the historic capital of the Ahom kingdom. The city and its surroundings contain the most significant Ahom era monuments in existence. The Ranghar, an amphitheater built for royal sports in the 18th century. That is one of the oldest amphitheaters in Asia. The Talatal Ghar, a seven-story palace with four underground levels, the largest Ahom era building in existence, and the great tank called Sibasagar that gives the city its name, surrounded by three temples. Walking through these monuments is to walk through the grandeur of an empire that outlasted the Mughals. Manas National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and also a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Manas sits along the Bhutan border in western Assam. It is wilder and less visited than Kaziranga, which makes it one of the most rewarding wildlife destinations in India for those who seek genuine solitude. It is home to the Indian one-horned rhino, the Bengal tiger, the Indian elephant, and uniquely the golden langur, one of the rarest primates in the world, found only in a small area along the Bhutan border. The Manas River, which flows out of the Bhutan hills through the park, is crystalline and fast and extraordinarily beautiful. The tea gardens of Upper Assam around Jorhat, Dibrugarh, and Tinsukia, hundreds of tea estates create a landscape that is unlike anything else in India. Rows of tea bushes extending to the horizon, colonial era planter bungalows surrounded by gardens, the smell of fresh tea in the air. Many estates now offer homestay and tourism experiences. Walking through the gardens, learning the plucking process, watching the leaves being withered and rolled and dried in a factory, and tasting the finished product in the place where it was born. If you drink tea and you have never visited an Assam tea garden, it belongs on your list. The festival of the river people. No episode about Assam can be complete without spending time on Bihu, the most important and beloved festival of Assam, celebrated 3 times a year in different forms. Rongali Bihu, the spring festival celebrated in mid-April, is the most joyful and the most distinctly Assamese. It marks the Assamese New Year, the beginning of the agricultural cycle, the arrival of spring after cold, dry months. Young men and women dress in traditional mekhela sador, the traditional Assamese women garment, a graceful two-piece silk ensemble, and dhoti kurta, gather in fields and open grounds and dance Bihu, a folk dance of irrepressible energy and joy, performed to the beat of the dhol drum and the haunting sound of the pepa, a horn made from a buffalo horn. Bihu songs, Bihu Geet, are earthy, celebratory, sometimes teasing, full of references to nature, the river, the rice harvest, and the pleasures of being alive in this particular land. Bihu is not a performance for audiences. It is a collective expression of identity. When Assam dances Bihu, it is saying, this is who we are. Kongali Bihu, the autumn festival in October, is more contemplative, a time when the granaries are empty before the harvest. when oil lamps are lit in the fields, and by the riverside to ask for the goddess's blessing on the growing crop. Bhogali Bihu, the winter harvest festival in January, is the festival of food and feasting. When the harvest is in and the community comes together to eat, celebrate, and share the abundance of the year. Satriya dance, the classical dance form born in the Satras of Assam, created by Sankardeva in 15th century, officially recognized as one of India's 8 classical dance forms in 2000. It was performed exclusively by monks for 5 centuries before being opened to lay performers and women in the 20th century. Its movements are precise, graceful, and deeply codified. The hand gestures, the footwork, the eye movements, all carrying specific narrative meaning. Watching a Satriya performance at a Majuli monastery to the sound of live Borgit music in a traditional performance space is one of the great cultural experiences of India. Bihu music and dance, the folk music traditional of Assam, centering on the dhol drum and the buffalo horn pipa, is one of the most energetic and joyful music traditions in northeastern India. Bhupen Hazarika's music, already met in our Remarkable People section, deserves its own cultural note here. His work represents the synthesis of Assamese folk music with broader Indian popular music traditions. Songs like Buku Hom Hom Kore and the film songs he composed for Bengali, Hindi, and Assamese cinema created a bridge between Assam's cultural world and the rest of India that no one before or since has managed quite as effectively. Assamese cinema, known informally as Jollywood, has a history stretching back to 1935 and a tradition of social realism that has produced internationally recognized films. Director Janu Barua is the most internationally acclaimed Assamese filmmaker whose films like Halodiya Choraye, Baudhan Khai, 1987, The Catastrophe, won the National Award for Best Film and brought Assamese cinema to global attention. Muga silk, produced exclusively in Assam. Muga is the world's only naturally golden silk, produced by silkworms that feed exclusively on the leaves of the som and sualu trees. It is extraordinarily durable. Legend says it lasts 100 years, and its warm, natural gold color deepens with every wash. A fine Muga Mekhela Sador is among the most prized garments in Indian textile culture. Assam has produced some of India's most celebrated sporting heroes in recent years. Hima Das, the Dhing Express, already met in our Remarkable People section. Her gold medals in 2018 brought unprecedented national attention to Assamese athletic talent. Lovlina Borgohain, born 1997 in Golaghat district, a boxer who won a bronze medal at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics in the welterweight category, one of India's 3 boxing medals at those games. She trains out of facilities that, by global standards, are remarkably humble. Her achievement is a testament to the talent that Assam's sporting tradition produces. Shiva Thapa, professional boxer from Guwahati, multiple-time national champion, Asian Games medalist. Jayanta Talukdar, archer, Commonwealth Games gold medalist. Traditional sport also has deep roots in Assam. Bulbul fights, contest between the small red-vented bulbul bird, have been a traditional Bihu time entertainment for centuries, now controversial for animal welfare reasons. Mustard oil wrestling, boat racing on the Brahmaputra, and traditional forms of martial arts rooted in the tribal communities all remain part of Assam's sporting culture. For those outside India, Assam is a label on a tea box that is both extraordinary legacy to have given a beverage to the world and a profound reduction of what the state actually is. Within India, Assam and the Northeast are often perceived through the lens of insurgency, floods, and political controversy. The real Assam, its musical richness, its extraordinary wildlife, its monastic culture, the grandeur of the Ahom kingdom, the philosophical depth of Sankardeva's legacy is less well known than it deserves to be. Visitors who come to Assam for Kaziranga tend to leave with a deeper experience than they expected. The rhinos are real and they are astonishing. But so is the Brahmaputra in the morning light. So is a cup of tea drunk in the garden where it was grown. So is Bihu music coming from across a field on an April evening. So is the Kamakhya temple at dawn. Assam has a way of exceeding expectation quietly, without drama, in the manner of a river that simply keeps flowing. What Assam most wants the world to understand is that its identity is ancient, complex, and proud, that the Ahom kingdom outlasted the Mughals, that one of India's greatest saints was born here, that the conversation of the one-horned rhinoceros is one of the great environmental achievements of the 20th century, and it happened here, and that the next time you make a cup of tea, there is a river in it, brown and vast and braided, and the hands of a million people who pick those leaves. Assam, where the river runs wild, where the rhinos graze in the morning mist, where the monks of Majuli have danced Satriya by lamplight for 5 centuries, where the tea gardens roll to the horizon in every shade of green, where Bhupen Hazarika told the world, "Man, you must cry for man." Next Monday, we travel south along the alphabet to Bihar, one of India's oldest, most historically significant, and most misunderstood states. The birthplace of Buddhism, the site of the Mauryan Empire's greatest capital, Pataliputra, the land of Nalanda, the greatest university of the ancient world, and a state whose modern story is a long, complicated journey from the depths of poverty and misgovernance toward something that deserves a much more nuanced telling. That's next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Don't miss it. Please subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. Leave a rating, it helps so much. And share this with someone who wants to know more about India. I'm Ray. We've been to Assam. The river remembers everything.